In the heart of a small, bustling town where everyone knew each other's business, there lived a man named Ebo, affectionately known by all as Uncle Ebo. He was one of the most popular taxi drivers in the area, a man whose presence was as reliable as the sunrise. At 45 years old, Uncle Ebo was a seasoned driver, married with 3 children, and known for his patience and kindness. His taxi was easily recognizable, not just because of its bright yellow color, but because of the words Suro Nipa boldly inscribed on its rear window. Suro Nipa translates to fear humans in English, a phrase that seemed to carry a deeper meaning for Uncle Ebo. Whenever someone mentioned his name, he would respond with a simple yet profound Suro Nipa, as if the words held a truth only he fully understood. Uncle Ebo's reputation for patience was legendary, and many believed it stemmed from a peculiar incident that had happened years ago. The story, whispered among locals, was that he had once argued with someone who later turned out to be a marine goddess. According to witnesses, in the heat of the argument, Uncle Ebo slapped the figure, who then vanished into thin air. The shock of the encounter left him speechless and bedridden for 2 whole weeks. Though he never spoke of it and often denied it ever happening, the incident seemed to have instilled in him a deep sense of tolerance and an aversion to conflict. Over the years, Uncle Ebo had become more than just a taxi driver to the people of the town. He was a confidant, a keeper of secrets, and someone who could be trusted with even the most delicate of personal issues. Despite being a talkative man, he had a remarkable ability to steer conversations toward light-hearted topics, never betraying the trust placed in him by those who confided in him. His talkativeness, however, was often a subject of teasing among the locals. People would joke that Uncle Ebo could talk for hours without saying anything of consequence. Yet when it came to matters shared in confidence, he was as silent as the grave. He was also a man of simple habits, never seen in the company of women unless they were passengers in his taxi. This led to much speculation about how he had managed to propose to his wife, with some even jesting that it must have been she who proposed to him. Uncle Ebo would always laugh off such comments, shaking his head with amusement. Aside from his taxi, Uncle Ebo's favorite place was the local football park. Although he had no skill for the game, he found great joy in watching the matches, using the time to unwind and relieve stress. Unlike many of the other men in town, he had no interest in playing drafts, a popular game known as dummy. He would often say that the game required too much scheming and concentration, and he had no intention of exhausting his mind over something as trivial as a game. However, it was rumored that he avoided the drafts players because he considered them lazy, spending entire days playing without accomplishing anything. But because Uncle Ebo was a man who rarely offended anyone, he preferred to use the excuse of mental exhaustion rather than voice his true opinion. Kindness was another hallmark of Uncle Ebo's character. He was known to give free rides to those in need, and often handed out money to people who shared their sad stories with him. He would take sick passengers to the hospital, sometimes even paying their medical bills out of his own pocket, never accepting repayment. He had been known to pay school fees for children whose families were struggling and had helped others start small businesses or learn a trade. His wife, though supportive, often scolded him for his excessive generosity, reminding him that they were not wealthy themselves. But Uncle Ebo's response was always the same. You don't have to be rich to be kind. One fateful day, Uncle Ebo picked up a passenger who would change his life forever. The man was 72 years old, wealthy, and lived alone in a large house on the outskirts of town. He had never married, nor had children, and his life was filled with regret. Twice he had tried to settle down, but both times his fiancées had tragically died before they could wed. Fearful of a curse, he had given up on love, and instead poured his energy into his work and businesses. Despite his wealth, he was a lonely man. And as Uncle Ebo listened to his story, he felt a deep sense of pity for him. The old man, whose name was Mr. Mensa, began to rely on Uncle Ebo for more than just transportation. Every morning, Uncle Ebo would pick him up and take him wherever he needed to go, and every evening he would drop him back home. This routine continued for over 3 years, during which time the two men grew close. Mr. Mensa, who had no family or close friends, came to see Uncle Ebo as the son he never had. One day when Uncle Ebo arrived at Mr. Mensa's house, he found the place eerily quiet. After knocking on the door for what felt like hours, a neighbor informed him that an ambulance had taken Mr. Mensa to the hospital earlier that day. Worried, Uncle Ebo rushed to the hospital and stayed by Mr. Mensa's side for a whole week until he was discharged. 2 days later, however, Mr. Mensa passed away peacefully in his sleep. The news of Mr. Mensa's death hit Uncle Ebo hard. He did not move his taxi that day, overcome with grief for the man he had come to regard as a father figure. The following day, he received a call from Mr. Mensa's lawyer, requesting his presence at the office. To his utter shock, the lawyer informed him that Mr. Mensa had left all his properties and the considerable sum of money in his bank accounts to Uncle Ebo. The will stipulated that Uncle Ebo was to arrange for Mr. Mensa's burial and manage the estate thereafter. At first, Uncle Ebo refused to accept the inheritance. He had never helped Mr. Mensa with any intention of gaining something in return. But the lawyer insisted, explaining that Mr. Mensa had been adamant about his decision. After much persuasion and with a heavy heart, Uncle Ebo finally agreed to accept the inheritance, promising to honor Mr. Mensa's last wishes. News of Uncle Ebo's sudden fortune spread like wildfire through the town. Some people believed he had been rewarded for his kindness, while others were more skeptical, suspecting foul play. Rumors began to circulate that Uncle Ebo had somehow caused Mr. Mensa's death in order to inherit his wealth. The once beloved taxi driver found himself the subject of gossip and suspicion, with some people even avoiding him altogether. Despite the rumors, Uncle Ebo remained true to himself. He used his newfound wealth to continue helping those in need, just as he always had. He paid for Mr. Mensa's funeral, ensuring it was a grand affair, and then quietly took over the management of the estate. He donated a portion of his inheritance to local charities, funded scholarships for underprivileged children, and even started a small business to provide jobs for the unemployed in the community. As time passed, the rumors began to fade, and people started to see Uncle Ebo for who he truly was, a kind-hearted man who had been blessed in return for his selflessness. He never let the wealth change him, continuing to drive his taxi and living a modest life with his family. In the end, the town came to realize that Uncle Ebo's story was not one of greed or deceit, but rather a testament to the power of kindness and the unexpected rewards it can bring. And so, the man who had always been known for his patience and generosity became a legend in the town, not for his wealth, but for the way he had earned it, with a heart full of compassion and a spirit untouched by greed. Years after Uncle Ebo's passing, his story lived on in the town. The taxi with Suro Nipa inscribed on its rear window became a symbol of humility and the enduring belief that true wealth is not measured in money, but in the kindness we show to others. The legacy of Uncle Ebo, the man who inherited a fortune through compassion, continues to inspire generations, reminding them that in a world where fear and suspicion often prevail, there is still room for love, trust, and simple, unwavering kindness. Thanks for watching. Your comments and likes mean a lot to me, and don't forget to subscribe and share. Also, I would love to know where you're watching from. I love you all.